strict vetting process for air travellers. Program to track ships launched. And National Swimming Championships deferred.
This is the National EMTV News with Helen Sayer.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for Wednesday's news. Domestic air travel will be restricted to a certain criteria needed to be met before being able to board a flight. State of Emergency Controller David Manning stating that they would allow only for those who want to return home and were unable to travel due to the initial 2-week lockdown. National carrier Air Niugini has put in place measures to ensure that SOE orders of social distancing and hygiene practices are in place.
Air Niugini has raised its health and safety measures for passengers travelling on their airline's domestic services in the efforts to mitigate the risk associated with the spread of coronavirus or COVID-19. Measures being put in place includes temperature check on all passengers prior to every flight, supplying all passengers with face masks and hand sanitizers, health information cards provided for passengers to fill in prior from the flight taking off, stopping in-flight catering and removing all in-flight magazines from their aircrafts, recommencing domestic flights since Tuesday 7th April, but not operating to the border provinces of Western, West Sepik and East Sepik, as well as the autonomous region of Bougainville and East New Britain, in line with the State of Emergencies Directive. Meanwhile, only travellers who fall under the requirements for travel by air will be allowed to travel. This includes students returning home, individuals travelling back to the place of residence, essential services, essential business travel and emergency travel.
That brings me to the 5 categories, to remind our people of the 5 categories for domestic travel. The first one being that the students returning to school or their usual place of residence, citizens returning to their usual place of residence. In this case, most of what we've seen thus far is families wanting to be reunited. The members of families that have been caught stranded prior to the lockdown and the continuation of the SOE. Essential services staff, that is our police and defence and our health and other essential services. Essential business travel to ensure that the business continuity is supported, as well as emergency flights, which also include repatriation of deceased persons. So those are the 5 categories that we're using at this point under the controlled environment to assess the reasons for approving for uplifting of passengers.
Adelaide Roxkari, National EMTV News.
The Transport Department has launched a tracking system that will enable the National Maritime Safety Authority to track and monitor all shipping vessels that come into Papua New Guinea. The tracking system, known as Maritime Intelligence Risk Suite, is anticipated to increase maritime surveillance from West Sepik at the north to Western in the southern PNG-Indonesia border and the autonomous region of Bougainville. This tracking system is able to identify the name of the ship, the type of shipping vessel, and the history of where the ship has visited before coming into PNG waters.
And basically what that allows us to do is track every single vessel that is the commercial or otherwise that has a presence in our EEZ or exclusive economic zone of Papua New Guinea. So it should give all Papua New Guineans a added level of comfort that not only are we monitoring our ports of entry and our land borders, but we're also monitoring, vessel movement within our EEZ. This, of course, will allow us to continue to put under surveillance certain ships. We are cognizant of the fact that when we are, and this is not unique to Papua New Guinea, but other countries, that when we're distracted by such a such a challenge of this magnitude, people will tend to try and abuse the systems and take advantage of our lack of surveillance in this area. So this is a warning, if any, to those who think that they can, break protocols, break our laws under these trying circumstances, that we are taking every reasonable step to ensure that we continue to monitor their business and their movements, and if found to be breaking our laws, they're subject to both not only the applicable fisheries and logging and export or customs and excise laws, but also penalties under the current state of emergency, of which, as I can remind you all, for an individual, it's up to 50,000 kina penalty or fine, or up to life imprisonment. That is for an individual. For a company, that's 500,000 kina fine, and of course, those who are involved in perpetrating the offence, up to life imprisonment as well. So.
Secretary for the Department of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, Father Jan Juba, is in discussions with the State of Emergency Controller David Manning on the resumption of classes. Father Jan, in a letter, was seeking the SOE Controller to resume classes sooner than April 27th. While in the media conference yesterday, Manning said he had received the letter by the DHER Secretary and discussions will continue today.
Correspondence from the Secretary for Health and Higher Education and Research and Science and Technology. He had just met me this afternoon, no more than 2 hours ago. So we are progressing those discussions even into tomorrow as well. So.
The opposition is dismayed with how the government is addressing the COVID-19 threat. Leader Belden Nama says allegations of the misapplication of 23 million kina is a bad start and jeopardizes the economy and the health of citizens. Nama was backed by Rabaul MP and Shadow Health Minister Dr. Alan Marat, who called on the government to step up its efforts and put an end to the COVID-19 pandemic in the country.
Members of the opposition held a news conference yesterday expressing the concerns regarding the government's efforts in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. Opposition leader Belden Nama says the government must not use the appropriate funding for political gain.
This for having knowingly placed thousands of lives at risk by ignoring their true responsibilities to our people, by using the coronavirus crisis as a smokescreen for their corrupt deals. Why I say as their corrupt deal? There's already revelations coming out by the own treasurer, Ian Linstaki, in a recorded videotape interview.
Shadow Health Minister and Rabaul MP Dr. Alan Marat outlined that under the recent SOE Act tabled on the floor of Parliament, there is no provision of an independent audit into the spending of funds during the state of emergency. He says the government must learn from other developed nations and make decisive decisions. Marat says the government must not lose sight of its efforts in climbing out of the debt hole created by the previous regime.
What the opposition is fearing is now happening. Government using COVID-19 as an opportunity for political corruption in the absence of provisions for audit in both the emergency acts and regulations. Secondly, government using COVID-19 funds for political cronies involving the millions of kina released by the government to fund this pandemic, being swiftly absorbed into huge numbers of hired vehicles and media consultants. And thirdly, personal protective equipments and medical kits, including testing kits, were secondary to this government.
Speaking yesterday, Prime Minister James Marape said a strategic framework is being put together by key government agencies to advise the government on what approaches to take during the declared state of emergency. PM Marape says this is being finalized and announcements will be made toward the end of this week. He says the government is doing its best to overcome the impacts of the pandemic.
Our ability and capacity in our health system is not there to contain corona that is caused by unrestricted movement. Our first and foremost intention is to ensure that we don't have people moving around unnecessarily. And the new normal will be coming out in a very not too distant future. In that new normal, businesses will flow. In the new normal, hopefully schools will start again. In the new normal, hopefully the greater function of our country will come back to life. But the 2 months of SOE gives opportunity for citizens of our country to live within order.
Jack Lapava Jr., National MTV News.
Rabaul MP and Shadow Health Minister Dr. Alan Marat says the government must not play the wait-and-see game. Dr. Marat says the current testing equipment is unreliable as results of suspected cases have been inconsistent. Marat says hospitals throughout the country need to increase their capacity and also to purchase more PPEs. The Shadow Health Minister says for tracing POIs or persons of interest, the government must use rapid diagnostic testing kits so testing is done to identify possible victims of COVID-19 at the earliest.
We now urge the government that much of the remaining funds should be used on personal protective equipments and medical kits, including testing kits. Return unnecessary hire costs and cut down on media consultants to recoup more funds and redirecting these funds towards meeting the inefficiencies of supplies. Hospitals throughout Papua New Guinea still need PPEs and medical kits, including testing kits.
You're watching National EMTV News. We'll be back with more after the break. Welcome back. With the state of emergency impacting all sectors, delivery of goods and services to some parts of the country have been immobilized. For the inland communities of Upper Koyari in the Central Province, air support is the only access to services. Through the Kairukuhiri District Development Authority, a cheque of 100,000 kina was presented to Airborne Logistics to help with freight.
The upper inlands of Koyari are one of the most difficult places to access. Communities relatively live a simple village life but lack essential services. With the state of emergency in place, transportation of goods and services has been minimal. Yesterday's presentation of 100,000 kina will see goods freighted and to help bring much needed health support to remote communities in Koyari. A decision by the Kairukuhiri District Development Authority.
The hardships people face out there. So, as their leader and member, I feel like I needed to do something to help our people out there. And I'm doing so today by way of this presentation of 100,000 to the aviation company, Airborne Logistics.
With no road access to Upper Koyari communities, Koyari LLG President Willie Vavi says people struggle to sell their produce and make it to town to access basic services. With the awareness of the restriction of movement during the SOE, President Vavi is confident the air support will make a difference. He says basic goods and services will be freighted.
Every day needs like soap, omo and cooking oil and laser braid and all this kind of stuff. Especially for the women, their needs are also to be catered, and this money will help certainly. Is that one when we put some things here, we put this money, it will cover the freight also. Well, the restrictions on travel, most of the freight we will have use this to get it up to our people up there.
Aviation company Airborne Logistics has been contracted to carry out this initiative. Spokesperson Doug Allgood says flying over the years, these communities face hardship. He says this will alleviate living as the Kokoda track is closed.
To bring this program forward, we know there is a big need. We see it every day when we're in the region, and I know that while we're grateful, even more so I know the people of the electorate will be extremely grateful for the affordable access that it's going to provide
Airborne Logistics will commence airlifting to inland Koyari under SOE laws. Joglapava Jr., National MTV News.
Meanwhile, Karukuhiri MP Peter Isoaimo says with the state of emergency pinning down delivery of services, the district will have to provide additional funding. MP Isoaimo says the District Development Authority will meet to decide on this to support communities in the district. While there are efforts in place by levels of government, Isoaimo indicated that board members want to see people being helped through various kinds of support. The Karukuhiri MP says funding will be pulled out of the DSIP allocation.
COVID-19 operations where the DDA will have to make some more decisions or another resolution to the effect to pay additional funding for emergency runs and to deliver supplies.
The opening of a newly built market worth more than 2 million kina was postponed because of non-compliance of the state of emergency restrictions. NCD Governor Paus Pakop, who was there to open the wildlife market at Erima in the Moresby Northeast electorate, deferred the opening of the market to a later date.
The opening of the wildlife market at Erima in the Moresby Northeast electorate has been deferred because of residents not following to the state of emergency restrictions on social distancing and public gathering of more than 100 people. NCD Governor Paus Pakop says he was not happy to see people gathering in huge crowds and not following directives from the government.
Yumi algada, you algada, want me, you may broken openings. Number two, and to keep social or physical distance. 1 meter or 2 meters apart. You look him now. Control I come. Police staff can arrest him. But today, you mean not have open market. You mean not have open market. Me like him by market you here. Help him you me. But you plan to talk. You plan to help him me or help him you me. So today market by not open.
Governor Pakop assured the local MP John Kaupa and other VIPs and the people who gathered at the occasion that he would still cut the ribbon if people heeded the preventative measures and observed them. He made the surprising decision minutes before the ribbon cutting proceeded.
You block community, you block go back, you block marking, 100 line, all by come, me by come na. Cut him on ribbon na, market play me can open na. You block income na, look at you block yet na, look at you milo there's a tublamun.
An angry Pakop said SOE law came into force only at special situations. The enforcement of the law now has been ignited by the health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Michelle Stephen, National MTV News.
Over in Leh, garden food vendors started selling on roadside last month to meet the demand of garden produce during the lockdown period. Leh's main market and other suburban markets were closed during that time. As a result, roadside markets emerged in the outer parts of the city, drawing a good number of customers.
This is one of many roadside markets which emerged following the lockdown period. It's a spot where Maru Manasseh and her children started selling a week ago. They previously sold their produce at 9 Mile Market. With the market currently closed, they are now selling here at the family residence in 8 Mile. For Maru, gardening is survival. She's been selling for years and says she's never seen a demand for garden produce like this. However, she says meeting this demand is still a challenge for her.
With
an increase in demand, she's now involved her children to help out. It's now a family affair for the Manasses, with mom bundling taros, her daughter assisting, and her only son Noah also giving a helping hand.
Just because of this virus, COVID-19, people struggle or finding milk income, so gardening is close to. It's almost sampler, miles away from the access road local. So side money and mad.
Roadside markets were hotspots during the 14-day lockdown period last month. These markets, although not properly coordinated, provided food security for the bulk of Leh population during the 14 days. Women who used to travel distances to sell at town markets were selling in the comfort of their front yard.
Mem helpi mi pla lo sustaining living dom pla bezo tokim pla lo stopping market to how pa mi pla ba make a living thing o simpla line lo block and how pa mi pla make a living. That's the only thing where mi pla make lo sustaining living dom pla na mi pla stop.
Meanwhile, Lay Market temporarily resumed operations last week Thursday following the 14-day lockdown. Other small markets including Kamkumung, Hanta Malahang and the 9 Mile Market will be open following further notice. Charlene Airy, National EMTV News, Lay.
Lay's market vendors are instructed to practice social distancing when selling their produce inside the market. According to Lay City Authority Interim CEO Neil Ellery, they would be sitting almost 2 meters apart. The officers guarding the market had undergone a training on the COVID-19 preventative measures and would be guiding the public when going to the market.
Our market tables have been realigned. That promotes social distancing between vendors, so we have at least 1.5 metres space between each vendor. We've also taken it on to educate the public as well as the vendors or the sellers in the market of the COVID-19. There's 3,700 World Health Organization approved brochures that have been translated into Pidgin. So we're handing out the Pidgin version as well as the English version. We opened up Thursday last week. We were closed for the Easter period and then we reopened Tuesday again this week, and we will remain open until we get direction otherwise from the state SOE controller. But if the sellers and the customers that come in maintain the order and control that we've got currently in place, I don't see any reason why we would be closing that market at any time in the near future. We've taken it on also to ensure that to control the crowds, we are letting sellers in it from 7 o'clock in the morning through to 8:30, and after 8:30 we open it to the public. So about.
And now looking at the NASFund market report, the Kina closed unchanged at $0.291 US in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your Kina was buying 0.4378 Australian dollars, 0.2835 US dollars, 0.4625 New Zealand dollars and 29.89 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold was trading lower, coffee closed lower, cocoa closed higher, copra and palm oil closed lower, crude oil is trading higher and copper closed the day higher. And on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed lower, the All Ordinaries is trading lower and the ASX is trading lower. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you stories making headlines overseas. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Turning overseas, U.S. President Donald Trump has pulled America's funding to the World Health Organization. He's blaming the organization for the extent of the crisis. Critics say it's a dangerous step and designed to distract his own failings.
America's reeling. More than 25,000 have died, its economy in free fall. Under fire for being slow to act, President Trump's now blaming the World Health Organization for mismanaging and covering up the spread of the virus.
The reality is that the WHO failed to adequately obtain, vet, and share information in a timely and transparent fashion.
The president pulling the plug on America's donation to the WHO of more than $650 million a year. That's 15% of the agency's total budget.
One of the most dangerous and costly decisions from the WHO was its disastrous decision to oppose travel restrictions from China and other nations.
Claiming its failure to act faster is to blame for the deadly extent of the crisis.
Fortunately, I was not convinced and suspended travel from China saving untold numbers of lives.
That was at the end of January, but Mr. Trump himself both ignored and undermined the severity of the crisis well into March. The US now accounts for more than a third of all infections worldwide. The WHO has yet to respond to today's announcement, but just last week urged countries not to use the virus to score political points.
If you don't want many more body bugs, then you refrain from politicizing it.
At a time like this, where we need to be sharing information, where we need to have advice that we can rely on, the World Health Organization has provided that, and we will continue to support it, and we will continue to make our contribution.
Clearly on the back foot, the president spent 45 minutes at an earlier stand-up attacking the media.
We did a lot. Look. You know you're a fake. You know that. Your whole network, the way you cover it, is fake.
State governors hitting back at the president's claim he and he alone will decide when to reopen the country for business.
It's not the Constitution. We don't have a king. We have a president.
One who seems intent as America's death toll soars on deflecting any blame.
In New Zealand, there are 20 new COVID-19 cases, almost all of them linked to the existing clusters. There are 1,386 cases, however, 728 have recovered, with deaths remaining at 9. There are mounting concerns for the safety and well-being of elderly rest home residents.
Amid the expectation of more elderly dying here at Burwood Hospital, where 6 have already lost their fight with COVID-19 and infection detected in more than 90 patients in 5 aged residential care facilities between Auckland and Christchurch, the Chief Ombudsman is launching his own investigation.
It pricks my conscience. I think the public's got a right to have someone such as the Ombudsman there to have a look. It's really what is fundamental to our role.
So he's rolling out an expert team to inspect facilities in lockdown to check on the vulnerable who have no voice in this unprecedented pandemic.
It's really important that we do protect the most vulnerable in our society, and the alarming reality is that we're seeing those clusters of cases now in those aged care facilities, so we welcome it.
The first signs yesterday that a closer look at aged care was needed.
We've seen just how tricky this virus is and that it can spread quite rapidly, so we think it's a very good point in time to undertake a review.
Age Concern says it's timely.
We should just be pleased to see that the action has been taken now. Yes, in an ideal world, perhaps we should have taken action some time ago, but that would have been with the benefit of hindsight.
Chief Ombudsman Peter Boscia is keeping his work low-key and not saying which homes his team will visit and when, just that they will be seen right across the country and not just at the rest homes that are seen as problematic. And he's not ruling out recommendations on current rules that are seeing the elderly dying alone.
Now, most people who get sick with COVID-19 won't need hospital treatment, but in a small number of cases, the virus attack is so severe they need a ventilator to help them breathe.
Yes, we need to intubate. That phrase many of us are familiar with from TV shows beginning the process. Using a laryngoscope, a tube's inserted through the patient's mouth and into their windpipe. Once it's in the right place in the trachea, a small balloon is inflated at the end of the pipe to hold it in place. The breathing tube is then attached to the ventilator, and medical staff can adjust the rate that it pushes air and oxygen into the lungs and adjust the oxygen mix. Ventilators also provide pressure that helps hold open the lungs so that these tiny air sacs inside, called alveoli, don't collapse. Their job is vital in exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide to and from the bloodstream. For the sickest patients, these machines are the difference between life and death. So why do some patients with COVID-19 experience more severe symptoms than others? Scientists in the UK are studying a vast store of DNA to determine if it could be down to genetics.
It's a big mystery why coronavirus can strike different people in so many ways.
With the lockdown, our streets are empty, so we've had to recreate a crowd. Some people who are infected have no symptoms or get a mild to moderate disease. About 1 in 5 people have a much more severe illness and can go on to need hospital treatment. A small number will die. Scientists think the answer could be in our DNA.
What looks like an ordinary warehouse could in fact hold the key. Inside is genetic material from 500,000 volunteers donated to UK Biobank. It's followed their health for more than a decade, and now it will also track those with COVID-19.
What are the differences in their genetics? Are there differences in the genes related to their immune response? Are there differences in their underlying health?
Scientists are looking for tiny variations in patients' genetic material. They'll be examining genes like one that's involved in making a structure on the outside of cells in our airways. It acts as a docking site for the virus, allowing it to enter and infect the cell. It could be that differences in people's DNA change this, making it easier for the virus to lock on, resulting in a more severe illness.
Intensive care units are filling up, and some patients are younger with no underlying health conditions. They're now the focus of a new study starting in New York. For diseases like flu and herpes, some people carry genetic variations that make them seriously ill, and this could be the case with coronavirus. The rapid spread of coronavirus means there's no shortage of patients to study. It's hoped this work could identify those most at risk and help in the hunt for new treatments.
Being in hospital with the coronavirus is scary, of course, but some doctors and nurses are finding a way to make their patients a little less afraid.
How would you like to wake up to this at your bedside? Personal protective gear may protect the wearer, but not the psyche of the patient.
It looked really menacing, especially.
How to even tell your caregivers apart? Just wearing a simple mask on the street, you realize how weird it is that your smile no longer translates. Does this look like a smile to you? So why not add a little humanity so the patient's eyes go from this to this? Respiratory therapist Robertino Rodriguez added a laminated badge, and just like that became
today's hero of the day.
He was memorialized in an illustration. Other medical personnel either picked up on the idea or spontaneously had it themselves. Meet Chief of Medicine Joe Varon at Houston's United Memorial.
Make them smile. Make your patient smile. They're going through hell right now.
At least patients know who they're going through hell with, even if it's just a modest Polaroid. Nurse Derek DeVault vaulted to internet fame. The part-time actor's handsome photo had people wondering, yo, but is he single though? And joking, Derek, all of a sudden I'm weak, help me. But this didn't start with coronavirus. 5 years ago, a California artist was so moved by seeing Ebola patients that she went to Africa and organized photographing medical staff. Mary Beth Heffernan combined heart and art and the patients.
They loved seeing who was inside the suits.
Now, some joke about pretending who's inside the suit. Anyone out there want to buy my idea for a rom-com about a doctor who tapes a picture of George Clooney on his personal protective equipment and the COVID patient who falls in love with it?
Also get a film of the chest, right arm.
This pediatric emergency physician took it a step further, inhabiting George Clooney to get a smile and to give reassurance.
Yeah, you're going to be fine.
Chukai Sports is next. We now join Godwin at the sports desk.
Thank you, Helen. The Oceania Swimming Championships deferred, and in NRL, more frustrations as the countdown continues to the season relaunch on May 28. Join me after the break.
Chukai Sports.
Welcome to Chukai Sports. The TOD's National Championships and the FINA Technical Officials Clinic has been deferred PNG Swimming Inc. advised affiliate members, due to the closure of these sporting facilities, including training centres, this event had to be deferred. The 13th Oceania Swimming Championships, to be held in Fiji in June, have also been deferred. Matthew Dunn from Oceania Swimming Association told affiliated members the decision was made after consultations with Fiji Swimming President Ben Rover. Dunn also said that the Oceania Swimming Association annual general meeting has also been postponed to a later date in the year. To NRL and Broncos veteran Darius Boyd has submitted, there is no way he will relocate to Sydney if there is the only way to keep the NRL season going. Earlier this year, Boyd announced he would be retiring from the game.
Darius Boyd being quoted as saying that if the three Queensland-based clubs in the NRL have to cross the border and basically set up camp in New South Wales so that they can restart the competition and not go back interstate and go into quarantine and all the rest of it, then he would retire from the game. He's coming towards the end anyway, but wouldn't want to go out that way, and he said 4 months in isolation, which is what he would see, or certainly 4 months in a camp situation, wouldn't suit him or his family's lifestyle, and that he would rather not play rugby league anymore. So that's just a bit of a snippet there. The NRL met with Channel 9 yesterday. Lots of commentary around this morning about how well those talks went. They could only have gone better than last week when Channel 9 released that statement criticising the NRL. So a lot going on behind the scenes, no doubt, with the financial implications of not playing football at the moment. But it seems like Channel 9 at least is talking again to NRL and vice versa. And yes, it also seems that the NRL has been able to, according to reports this morning, establish some line of credit with some banks overseas too that would enable the league to look after and provide some financial stability for clubs as well as the league itself.
Meanwhile, frustrated and angry at the lack of communication from NRL bosses, the Warriors are working through the uncertainty around the planned season relaunch. It was announced to all clubs they will hold off training until the Warriors are ready.
But in order to make the May 28 season restart, the Warriors will need to leave for Sydney early next week to allow for self-isolation and adequate training time. As we speak, Warriors Chief Cameron George is locked in a conference call with the NRL officials and will provide more of an update shortly. However, even if all the right boxes are ticked and the Warriors do make it to Australia in time, Coach Stephen Kearney said today he can't guarantee all his frontline players will agree to play while leaving family behind.
Trukai Sports continues after the break. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To baseball, New Zealand's Elliot Johnson has been voted Rookie of the Year in the Australian Baseball League, and with the bright lights of America calling, along came COVID-19.
He was eyeing up the biggest league in baseball, but instead Elliot Johnstone's lockdown in Auckland, his Rookie of the Year accolade just reinforcing what could have been.
My phone's kind of blown up. It's a weird feeling. But yeah, everyone's reached out, congratulated me, saying that you deserve it and all your hard work showed off.
The 21-year-old pitcher's come a long way, bouncing back from a horrid 2018 season with the Auckland Tuatara, only taking a total of 8 strikeouts.
And I told him flat out, I'm like, you're going to have to do these things or you're not going to be able to pitch for the Tuatara next year.
All winter last year, Johnstone perfected his technique, sending videos to coach Steve Mintz.
I kind of just said, no, I'm going to leave that season behind me and this is a fresh start.
This past season, a whole different Johnstone, pitching 28 strikeouts and also helping the Tuatara to their first ever playoffs appearance. He was peaking at just the right time, named to debut for the New Zealand Diamond Blacks in Arizona in the cancelled World Classic. Several major league clubs were travelling across America to check out the Kiwi pitcher.
I had already called Elliot and told him, I'm like, hey, I said, when you leave to come over here, I said, you need to hug and kiss everybody goodbye. I said, because, I'm hoping that you're not going to go home.
Despite coronavirus shutting down the American season, Johnstone's still in contact with Major League scouts.
Yeah, just got to wait it through, and then I'm sure that the same opportunities that I had before COVID-19 will still be there.
With a well-timed pitch, the young Kiwi now just needs the pandemic to be struck out.
You're watching National EMTV News, the weather forecast for the next 24 hours when we come back.
True Kai Sport. True Kai Sport.
This weather update is proudly brought to you by Money Plus. With you always.
A look at the weather forecast in the southern region. Fine although cloudy in Port Moresby. Mostly fine weather in Daru, Alotau and Popondetta. Cloudy with a few showers in Kerema. In the Momase region, cloudy with a shower or two in Lee, Medang and Wewak. Mostly fine weather in Vanimo. In the New Guinea Islands region, cloudy with a shower or two in Lorengau, Kavieng. Mostly fine weather in Kokopo and Rabaul. Fine with a few showers after in Kimbe and showers and thunderstorms in Bukar. And in the Highlands region, cloudy with a shower or two in Mount Hagen, Goroka and Kundiawa. Some rain showers in Mendi and Wabeg. Forecast for small crafts for the next 24 hours. Waters of southern PNG Indonesian border through Torres Strait and Daru to Kiwai Island to Kerema, to Yule Island to Hood Point, Arama Coast to Samarai Island, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of eastern and western Milne Bay Islands, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of East Cape to Cape Vogel to Finschhafen, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of Finschhafen through Bitias and Dampier Straits to Siasi Island to Long Island, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of Long Island to Karkar Island, Medang to Bogia, to Wewak to Aitape to Vanimo, to northern PNG Indonesian border, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. Waters of Manus and its western group of islands, seas of 0.5 to 1 meter. Waters of New Ireland, East and West New Britain and Bougainville, seas of 0.5 to 1.3 meters. A look at the ocean forecast for PNG areas. In the Coral Sea, seas smooth with east to southeast winds at 10 to 20 knots. In the Solomon Sea, seas smooth with southeast winds at 10 to 15 knots. In the Bismarck Sea, seas slight to moderate with southeast to southwesterly winds at 10 to 15 knots. And in the Pacific Ocean, seas smooth to slight with east to southeasterly winds at 10 to 15 knots.
The weather update was proudly brought to you by Money Plus. With you always.
And that's the way it is this Wednesday, 15th of April 2020. On behalf of the entire EMTV News team, pleasant viewing. Good night.